On a peaceful Sunday morning in Savannah, Georgia, the calm of the town is abruptly disturbed by a shocking discovery. The lifeless body of Pastor Richard Hale, a well-respected and cherished figure in the community, is found in his church office by a janitor. The janitor, who had arrived early to prepare for the day's service, immediately contacts 911 after finding the scene. Detective Paula Marks, an experienced investigator with the Savannah Police Department, quickly arrives at the church following the call. As she walks through the church's main hall toward Pastor Hale's office, she encounters a scene filled with chaos and grief. Members of the congregation have begun to gather outside, murmuring in disbelief. Upon entering the office, Detective Marks is struck by the brutality of the crime. Pastor Hale's body is slumped over his desk, surrounded by a pool of blood. The wounds are severe and suggest a frenzied attack, with initial assessments indicating multiple stab wounds, and the positioning of the wounds suggesting the killer intended to make him suffer. There are no signs of forced entry, and nothing appears to be missing, leading Detective Marks to conclude that the crime was personal and likely driven by intense emotions. Detective Marks begins her investigation by interviewing the janitor who discovered the body. The janitor, visibly shaken, explains that he arrived at the church around 6:30 a.m. and went straight to Pastor Hale's office to discuss the day's schedule. Upon opening the door, he found the pastor already dead. He didn't touch anything and immediately called the police. Detective Marks then speaks with members of the congregation gathered outside. They describe Pastor Hale as a kind and devoted leader who had been with the church for over 20 years, known for his passionate sermons and commitment to helping those in need. The congregation is in shock, struggling to understand why anyone would want to harm him. As crime scene technicians begin their work, Detective Marks examines the office more closely. She notices that the desk is cluttered with papers and books, typical of a pastor's workspace. However, one item stands out: an open diary. She flips through its pages and finds detailed notes on counseling sessions with various congregation members. The most recent entries mention meetings with a young choir member, Lily Turner. Detective Marks decides to start her inquiry by speaking with Lily Turner, finding her contact information in the church records, and arranging a meeting later that day. Meanwhile, she continues to gather information from other congregation members, some of whom mention that Pastor Hale often held late-night meetings at the church, supposedly for counseling. Some of these sessions involved younger choir members, which raises concerns for Detective Marks. As the day unfolds, the media catches wind of the murder, and news vans begin lining the streets outside the church. Reporters are eager for a statement from the police, but Detective Marks knows that she must keep the investigation's details under wraps for the time being. She releases a brief statement confirming that Pastor Hale was murdered and that the investigation is ongoing. She asks the public for any information that could aid in solving the case. By the end of the day, Detective Marks has compiled a list of potential suspects but has no clear motive or evidence pointing to any one person. She understands the need for caution, as the murder of a beloved community leader could easily stir up strong emotions and lead to false accusations. Her next step is to interview Lily Turner and learn more about her relationship with Pastor Hale. Detective Paula Marks begins her investigation into Pastor Richard Hale's murder by looking into his personal life. Rumors about late-night counseling sessions with younger choir members begin to emerge, raising questions about his true character. One name repeatedly surfaces: Lily Turner. The 18-year-old choir member has recently been acting withdrawn and distressed. Detective Marks arranges an interview with her at home. When Paula arrives, she is greeted by Lily's parents, Margaret and Henry Turner. The couple seems tense but cooperative. Lily joins them in the living room, looking nervous and avoiding eye contact. Detective Marks starts by asking basic questions about Lily's relationship with Pastor Hale. At first, Lily's answers are vague and evasive. She claims the counseling sessions were just to help her with personal issues, and that nothing inappropriate occurred. However, her nervousness suggests otherwise. Detective Marks presses for more details, but Lily remains tight-lipped. Sensing she won't get much more from Lily directly, Paula decides to speak with Lily's friends and other choir members. They confirm that Lily had been spending considerable time with Pastor Hale, often late at night. Some mention that Lily appeared unusually close to him, noting instances where they were seen together in ways that went beyond a typical pastor-choir member relationship. One friend reluctantly admits that Lily had confided in her about feeling confused and guilty about her relationship with the pastor. Armed with this information, Detective Marks seeks a warrant to check Lily's phone records. After reviewing the logs, she uncovers frequent late-night calls between Lily and Pastor Hale. The text messages are even more revealing, containing intimate and suggestive content. This new evidence dramatically shifts the investigation. What once seemed like a straightforward murder case now has elements of a hidden affair, jealousy, and betrayal. Detective Marks arranges a second interview with Lily, this time presenting the evidence she has gathered. Faced with the phone records and text messages, Lily breaks down and admits to having an intimate relationship with Pastor Hale. She explains how it began during one of their late-night counseling sessions, initially as emotional support, but soon developing into something more. Lily is visibly distressed, fearing the judgment of her community and the potential consequences if their affair becomes public. After some hesitation, she reveals that her mother, Margaret Turner, had discovered the affair. Margaret had found handwritten notes from Pastor Hale in Lily's room and confronted her about it. Lily confides that her mother was furious and threatened to expose the pastor, blaming him for corrupting her daughter. This revelation shifts Detective Marks's focus to Margaret Turner. She begins to consider the possibility that Margaret's discovery of the affair could have provided a strong motive for the murder. Paula now needs to understand the dynamics within the Turner household and whether Margaret's anger could have led to such drastic actions. Detective Marks decides to conduct a more thorough search of the Turner home. She obtains another warrant and, accompanied by a team of officers, returns to the house. During the search, they find the notes Margaret had mentioned, along with several personal items that suggest a deeper connection between Lily and Pastor Hale. More importantly, they discover a computer in Margaret's room with internet searches related to sedatives and methods of incapacitation. As the investigation deepens, Detective Marks prepares to confront Margaret Turner with the evidence she has collected. She knows that obtaining a confession from Margaret will be crucial to solving the case. Detective Paula Marks shifts her focus to Lily Turner's family, suspecting that someone close to Lily may have had a motive to murder Pastor Richard Hale. During an interview with Margaret Turner, Lily's mother, Paula notices that Margaret appears unusually composed. Despite her calm exterior, her eyes betray underlying tension. Margaret begins by explaining how she grew suspicious of Lily's behavior in recent months. Lily's secretive late-night comings and goings hadn't escaped her notice. Margaret admits that her concerns grew to the point where she decided to search Lily's room. During the search, she found handwritten notes from Pastor Hale that were suggestive and highly inappropriate, confirming her worst fears about her daughter's involvement with the pastor. Detective Marks listens carefully, noting Margaret's controlled tone, but sensing a deeper emotional turmoil beneath the surface. Margaret's admission raises the question of whether she confronted Pastor Hale about the affair or took matters into her own hands. The implications are serious, and Paula decides to pursue this lead further. The police obtain a warrant to search the Turner household, focusing on finding additional evidence that might link Margaret to the crime. During the search, they uncover the notes Margaret had mentioned, confirming the intimate relationship between Lily and Pastor Hale. However, what they find next is even more troubling. A computer in Margaret's room with internet searches related to sedatives and ways to incapacitate someone. This discovery raises a significant red flag. As the search continues, the police find a syringe hidden in a bathroom cabinet. Analysis later confirms that the syringe contains traces of a potent sedative, one capable of rendering someone helpless. This discovery implies a premeditated plan, possibly involving the use of the sedative to incapacitate Pastor Hale before the stabbing. Margaret's carefully constructed facade begins to unravel as the weight of the evidence mounts. During a follow-up interview, Paula confronts Margaret with the findings. Initially, Margaret denies any involvement in the murder, insisting that her sole concern was to protect her daughter from further harm. However, as Paula presents more evidence, the notes, the internet searches, and the syringe, Margaret's composure begins to falter under intense questioning. Eventually, Margaret admits that she had confronted Pastor Hale about the note she found in Lily's room, describing how she felt betrayed and furious, believing that the pastor had taken advantage of her daughter. Margaret's anger and sense of betrayal are palpable as she recounts the confrontation, asserting that her goal was simply to scare Pastor Hale, to make him understand the severity of his actions, and to ensure he stayed away from Lily. However, Paula presses further, suggesting that Margaret's actions might have gone beyond a simple confrontation. The evidence points to a planned action involving a sedative, which reveals an intention much greater than a mere scare tactic. Faced with this line of questioning, Margaret's resistance crumbles as she admits that she did, in fact, purchase the sedative, intending to use it to make Pastor Hale vulnerable and confront him without the risk of physical retaliation. Margaret's admission marks a significant turning point in the investigation. Detective Marks now has a clearer understanding of the events leading to the murder. Driven by a mother's protective instincts and a desire for retribution, Margaret had planned to incapacitate Pastor Hale. The brutal stabbing that followed suggests that her anger and sense of betrayal overwhelmed her original intentions. With Margaret's partial confession, Paula continues to build her case. She re-examines the church's surveillance footage, focusing on the timeline of events from the night of the murder. The footage shows Margaret entering the church late at night alone and leaving an hour later, which perfectly matches the estimated time of death, further implicating her in the crime. Detective Marks knows there is still a long road ahead before the case is closed, but Margaret's confession brings her one step closer to unraveling the full truth. As the investigation progresses, Paula remains resolute in her determination to uncover the truth and deliver justice for all affected by this tragic event. The case has taken a significant toll on everyone involved, revealing the dark and complex nature of human relationships and the lengths to which people will go to protect their loved ones. Paula hypothesizes that Margaret sedated Pastor Hale before the stabbing, ensuring he remained conscious but unable to defend himself from the brutal attack. The meticulous planning evident from the sedative's use suggests a mixture of deep emotional turmoil and a cold, calculated desire for revenge. Paula's hypothesis gains further support when she revisits Lily Turner's testimony. Lily had mentioned feeling increasingly distant from her mother and sensing growing tension at home. Friends of Lily had also noticed her erratic behavior and rising distress in the weeks leading up to the murder. These observations align with the idea that Margaret had been planning her actions for some time, driven by an obsessive need to protect her daughter and punish the man she believed had corrupted her. Margaret's love for her daughter, Paula realizes, had turned into something darker and vengeful. Margaret had seen herself as the only person capable of saving Lily from further harm, and this sense of duty evolved into a thirst for revenge. The handwritten notes, late-night meetings, and intimate relationship between Lily and Pastor Hale had fueled Margaret's anger and sense of betrayal. Her actions, Paula believes, were not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated plan for punishment. Paula digs deeper into Margaret's past, uncovering a history of fiercely protective behavior toward Lily. Margaret had always been a vigilant mother, but the discovery of the affair pushed her over the edge. Friends and family describe Margaret as someone who would do anything for her daughter, even to the point of overstepping boundaries. This protective instinct, combined with a profound sense of betrayal, culminated in a methodical and brutal plan. Detective Marks continues to gather evidence, consulting with forensic experts to strengthen the case against Margaret. Forensic analysis of the crime scene supports Paula's theory. Traces of the sedative are found in Pastor Hale's bloodstream, confirming that he had been drugged before the attack. The positioning of the stab wound suggests that he was unable to defend himself, consistent with the sedative's effects. Paula's investigation also reveals Margaret's meticulous preparation. Internet searches on her computer detail various sedatives and their effects, as well as methods for administering them covertly. Receipts and purchases tracked back to Margaret show that she acquired the sedative weeks before the murder, indicating premeditation. The evidence paints a clear picture of a mother who meticulously planned every step to ensure her revenge would be carried out. As Paula prepares to present her findings to the district attorney, she reflects on the complexity of the case. Margaret's actions, driven by a twisted sense of love and protection, resulted in a cold-blooded murder. The case highlights the unpredictable nature of human emotions and the extreme lengths people will go to protect their loved ones, even when it leads to devastating consequences. The evidence against Margaret Turner continues to mount, leaving little doubt about her involvement in Pastor Hale's murder. Armed with conclusive forensic results and detailed timelines, Detective Paula Marks is ready to confront Margaret with the damning findings. Paula arrives at the Turner residence, her sense of urgency and purpose clear. The initial interview with Margaret had raised suspicions, but now, with the weight of evidence behind her, Paula knows it's time for a more direct approach. As Paula sits across from Margaret in the small, cluttered living room, she senses the tension in the air. Margaret maintains a stoic expression, but Paula detects a flicker of fear in her eyes. "We need to talk about the evidence we've gathered in Pastor Hale's case," Paula begins, her voice firm yet calm. Margaret shifts slightly in her seat, her eyes briefly darting toward the family photographs on the wall. "I've already told you everything I know," she responds defensively. Paula presents the key pieces of evidence: the surveillance footage showing Margaret entering and leaving the church, the syringe with traces of sedative, the internet search history, and a fingerprint found on the pastor's desk that matches Margaret's. Each piece of evidence is presented methodically, leaving no room for ambiguity. With each revelation, Margaret's composure starts to crack. Her breathing becomes shallow and her hands tremble slightly. "I didn't mean for it to end this way," she mutters, her voice barely audible. Paula presses gently but firmly. "We have the evidence. We know you were there. We know you drugged him. What we need to understand is why." Margaret's resolve crumbles. She begins to sob, her body shaking with each cry. "He was supposed to be a man of God," she says between tears. "He was supposed to help people, not take advantage of them. He hurt my daughter. He corrupted her." Paula listens intently, allowing Margaret the space to continue. "I wanted him to suffer for what he did to Lily," Margaret confesses. "I didn't know what else to do. I had to protect her to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else." The painful confession brings a sense of clarity to the investigation. Paula ensures that the conversation is recorded, and with Margaret's admission, the case against her becomes airtight. The emotional weight of the confession is significant, revealing a mother pushed to extremes by the perceived need to protect her child at all costs. Margaret is arrested immediately and charged with first-degree murder. As she is escorted from her home in handcuffs, the neighbors watch in shock and disbelief. News of the arrest spreads quickly, and the community struggles to reconcile the image of their beloved pastor with the revelations of his misconduct. Congregation members are torn between feelings of betrayal and the need to support each other through the crisis. The church, once a symbol of unity and faith, becomes a center of controversy and sorrow. While awaiting trial, Margaret remains in emotional turmoil. The reality of her actions weighs heavily on her as she grapples with the consequences of her decision. Her relationship with Lily, which once motivated her actions, is now strained and uncertain. Lily, caught between the trauma of her experiences and the loss of her mother, faces an uncertain future. Detective Paula Marks, although satisfied with the resolution of the case, reflects on the tragic nature of the events. The investigation has revealed not just a crime, but also deep emotional scars and complexities that led to it. Paula knows justice must be served, but she also recognizes the profound human cost of the tragedy. Lily Turner, at the center of this storm, is overwhelmed by a tangled web of emotions: guilt, grief, and confusion. The affair with Pastor Hale and her mother's subsequent murder of him weigh heavily on her. Lily withdraws from both her family and the church, unable to face the judgmental eyes of the congregation or the pity from her peers. She becomes reclusive, seeking solace in isolation while grappling with the trauma of her experiences. Detective Paula Marks, having concluded one of the most difficult cases of her career, finds herself reflecting deeply on the complexity of human relationships and the dark places they can lead. She revisits the evidence and the interviews, trying to piece together the emotional landscape that led to such a tragic outcome. The case serves as a grim reminder of how betrayal, control, and misguided love can spiral into devastating actions. Paula's reflections lead her to a somber understanding of the human psyche, recognizing that while justice has been achieved in a legal sense, the emotional and psychological scars on those involved will endure long after the trial is over. The case has revealed the vulnerabilities and failings of those who were meant to be protectors and moral leaders, highlighting the dangerous secrets they harbored. The community itself is fractured. Congregation members are torn between feelings of betrayal by their pastor and sympathy for Margaret Turner. Some are outraged by Pastor Hale's hidden sins, while others struggle to reconcile his actions with the man they once respected. The church, now under new leadership, faces an uphill battle to rebuild trust and restore faith among its members. Margaret Turner, now incarcerated and awaiting trial, reflects on her actions from the confines of her cell. The initial sense of righteous indignation that fueled her actions has been replaced by a crushing realization of the irreversible consequences. She is haunted by the thought that, in trying to protect and avenge her daughter, she has only caused more pain and suffering. The trial becomes a media spectacle, drawing national attention. Margaret's defense team attempts to portray her as a mother, driven to extreme measures out of love and desperation, while the prosecution focuses on the cold, calculated nature of her crime. The courtroom becomes a battleground of emotions, with testimonies from Lily, church members, and forensic experts painting a vivid picture of the events leading up to and following the murder. The jury's verdict finding Margaret guilty of first-degree murder brings closure to the legal proceedings, but leaves many in the community grappling with unresolved emotions. The story of Pastor Richard Hale's death becomes a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, the destructive potential of secrets, and the terrifying lengths a parent will go to when they believe their child has been wronged. For Detective Paula Marks, the case remains etched in her memory as a profound lesson in the human condition. It reinforces her belief in the importance of empathy and understanding in her work. Recognizing that behind every crime lies a complex tapestry of emotions and motivations,